Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you for joining us once again for the Australian Book Lovers podcast. Our mission, as always, is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature that spans a whole range of genres to book lovers all around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I am Darren Kavanagh, dystopian science fiction and horror author, avid reader, and one of your co-hosts and co-founders of Australian Book Lovers, coming to you today from Kavanagh country.
And I'm Veronica Strachan, aka V.E. Patton, fantasy, science fiction, memoir and picture book writer, voracious reader, and the other one of your co-founders and hosts, coming to you today from Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung country. And I'm sorry, I'm going to perhaps stumble. I've been Zooming all day today, so I might have run out of words. Let's see how we go, Darren.
Well, give it another month, Veronica, and you will have set up your little pretend, Veronica, with captured your voice perfectly, and you can kick back and watch some telly, read a book in your pajamas, while the other Veronica V2 does the Zoomies.
That. Well, I know that's never going to happen, because the more I'm looking into AI, the more I'm a little bit worried about the creatives in the world. So we will keep investigating that. But in the meantime,
we are here at episode number 84.
84, indeed we are. And let's start with something, it's a little ho-hum, the bingo number. It's 7 dozen, so that's just not very exciting.
Yeah, I don't think accountants or mathematicians should have anything to do with creating the bingo representation.
And there's not even any little story behind the 7 dozen, so no, let's move right along to, you tell us what you've seen the meaning of 84 is. Because was it 84 or 87 that was the Australian cricket team's kind of devil's number there for a while that they kept getting out on? I can't remember now.
Oh, look.
It was in the early days.
My cricket days ended when back when you could still get collect cricket stickers, and I was hoping to get a foilie, so that would have been 81, I reckon.
Okay.
But 84, of course, we love delving into the meaning. We love delving into the year that was in Australia. So I'll start with the meaning. So apparently the number 84 represents time to reap the bounty for previous hard work and persistence while working towards one's goals. Now, the number 84 may also signify a strong work ethic and discipline to achieve goals and manifest our desires. So there we go. Well, I guess we've made it so far to 84, not for being lazy, that's for sure. So I wonder what the bounty's going to be. Maybe, we'll see. Maybe,
perhaps people might buy a few more of our merchandise products, because they're just starting to trickle out the door. You might want to get a beautiful mascot as a reader or a writer on a cup or a pen or a book or a T-shirt. That'd be a good bounty.
Well, I was just thinking maybe a Australian Book Lovers GoFundMe, and I'm not looking for much. I'm just thinking like a really cool beanbag to read in. A real funky Australian Book Lovers beanbag.
One of the news articles I have, you might quite like those. So let's keep moving on.
Okay, but
what
anyway,
else have you got?
We of course, as I mentioned, we go back to the year that was in Australia, and 1984. What a year! Now I know 1983 came with a few downers, really, but 1984, as groovy as it could be. Obviously, I think Ghostbusters came out then, so it can't be a bad year. So, in January of 1984, the final Narara Music Festival was held on the central coast of New South Wales. And that lineup featured In Excess, Simple Minds, The Pretenders, Talking Heads, Eurythmics and Def Leppard. So what a cracking lineup. And a lot of those names really are representative of music in the 80s. So go to the central coast of New South Wales.
Beautiful.
In February, bit of a milestone for Australia, Medicare came into effect in 1984. Now here's one that was how would I know? But on the 14th of February, apparently Elton John married Renee Blall in Sydney. So that's pretty cool.
That.
Oh, there you go.
Everybody went, what?
Well, that's cool that he chose good old Australia.
Yeah. Oh, to get married, yes. Yeah,
Yes,
I
yes.
think she was actually originally from Sydney. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Well, yeah, look, behind the curtains, it may have been publicity. I don't know. But still, it makes for interesting trivia. Now, on the 26th of March, the 100 note was finally introduced in Australia. Now, I think I remember, if I remember correctly, the original note had Douglas Mawson on it, didn't it? The Antarctic explorer.
I haven't seen that many, Darren, so I would struggle to remember
Oh,
that.
I'm pretty sure that it was like a white paper one back then.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I'm sure someone could point me out if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Sir Douglas Mawson on there, which is, one day I'd love to delve into that tale. That's amazing. Anyway, the real important thing that happened in 1984, now you probably want to just pause what you're doing and steel yourself for this one, because this is the start of a lot. So in April of 1984, a 915-gram jar of Vegemite was the first product in Australia to be electronically scanned at a checkout.
Woohoo!
There you go. The beep at the checkout began with a humble jar of Vegemite.
There you go.
Now, I won't go into the barcodes, and if you do have anything in front of
No.
you right now, pick any item up, look at the barcodes, you'll notice that there's 3 double lines, very long ones compared to the rest, and they don't have a number. I'll leave that up to your imagination.
Okay.
On the 19th of April, Advance Australia Fair was proclaimed as Australia's national anthem. Not only that, green and gold was also declared our national colours. So I actually thought it was earlier than that, but there you go. But saying that, for a lot of people, that's a long time ago. So
Yeah, well, I was doing completing my midwifery training. There you go.
well, I was still playing in the schoolyard at lunchtime. And which leads me to the next cool thing that happened in 1984. This is when I guess the training began to to separate the classes, because for a while there, even as a young tacker playing in the schoolyard, I could feel rich because I could have my little A-Team Velcro wallet, and inside would have lots of $2 and $1 notes. But alas, that sort of began to come to an end. And on the 14th of May, the $1 coin was introduced in Australia. And having 3 coins in your pocket doesn't feel the same as having 3 notes, but there you go.
There you go.
Now, an odd one, or not an odd one, but probably a very important one, on the 18th of May in New South Wales, gay sex between consenting adult males was decriminalised, which is kind of shocking, really, in the sense that in the 80s, that should have been done in the 60s. But anyway... on a sombre note, the National Crime Authority was established, good or bad, who knows. Now, here in August, Brenda Hodge becomes the last person to be sentenced to death by Western Australia. Now, that actually, she became the last person in the country as a whole, because I think a year later, the complete abolition of capital punishment took place. So her sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment. Now, on the 1st of August, Australian banks are deregulated. How'd that work out for everybody in 2023? For as far as infamous crime, obviously always good triggers for stories. This one's somewhat infamous. In 2nd of September, 7 people were shot dead and 12 wounded in a bikie shootout between rival bikie gangs, the Bandidos and Comancheros, in the Sydney suburb of Milperra. On the writing front, Tim Winton's novel Shallows won the Miles Franklin Award.
Oh, did I tell you I met him?
No.
Yeah. He was doing some media for his brilliant documentary, which is Ningaloo, about the Ningaloo Reef, which is over in Western Australia, and they were trying to save that from mining and development, and he'd spent 12 months doing it. But he came to the Kyneton Town Hall, it's a little country town, and he spoke, and I went and rebought Cloud Street and got him to sign it and had a chat. But so he was fantastic. Typical introverted, shy writer, but he was really lovely, and the one who chatted to him was good. So prolific writer.
Well, well, definitely, because I mean, we're going back 84. He was already a winner.
Yeah,
so there we go.
He's written 40 odd books, I think. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to cinema releases for Australia, a bit of a cracker Aussie movie came out. I'm not sure, I don't know if you've seen this one. I actually watched it not too long ago while I was working. Razorback. about the killer boar. And it's actually stunning cinematography. And look, to be honest, I believe it was an American cinematographer and director that came over here to film it, but obviously Australian actresses and actors. Yeah, beautifully shot. But look, as serious and as tense as it can be about a killer piggy. So there we go. Now for TV, on the 30th of January, Perfect Match was launched. Now when I read that, I'd completely forgotten about that. That had been erased from my memory. And now suddenly I remember Perfect Match and I've got visions of a robot. So I'm not going to go any further than that.
Yeah, no, don't go. Don't go there.
I'm going to finish with Australian Invention in 1984. This one is, I was really surprised to see one that, it was done here in Australia. And two, surprising how much it's infiltrated our society. And that is an ATPD. What is that, you might be asking? Well, it's technically a PB/5 ATPD, which is an acronym for Audio Tactile Pedestrian Detector, which is the two-rhythm buzzer and vibrating touch panel and braille detection arrow for safe pedestrian road crossing.
There you go. That one.
Yeah, so there we go. So what a cool invention. Again, Aussies kicking way above their
Australia.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, that was a great thing. It gave us kids a big button to push to annoy the traffic when we were stopping cars for no reason. And it was a race
to the post, indeed. Yeah, all of those things, yeah.
But that was a little bit of a snapshot for what was a groovy year, 1984, to celebrate episode 84 for the Australian Book Lovers. So before we jump into news and all the good things, I believe you have a really cool interview lined up for us for this episode.
Look, we do, but before I go to the interview, I want to say to you, of course, you've skipped over one of the most famous books around was in fact 1984, which was a dystopian novella published by George Orwell in 1949.
I was going to say that wasn't published in 1984.
No. But there were many conversations that year and many retrospectives about how much of it had come true and how much it was very much, still the omnipresent Big Brother. So for those that don't know, 1984, it follows Winston Smith, who's a really low-ranking member of the party, who's frustrated by the omnipresent eyes of the party and its ominous ruler, Big Brother. So basically Big Brother rules everybody's lives, and it's all about language as mind control and the fact that those in control, those in the power, can change the narrative however they want, and they kind of rewrite history and all this kind of thing. So yeah, it was a really spooky thing, but I feel like with the false narratives and the false news and the good news and
doublespeak,
the internet and doublespeak as we have, there's so much to be saying yes. In fact, it was a bit of a future visionary. But there you go. So 1984. I remember it scared the life out of me when I read that, because I thought, how could they do that? How could they let them get away with it? But of course they do. People are always interested in power. So there you go, 1984 by George Orwell. Go back and have a read of it. It's a really scary book.
Yeah, isn't it funny? I think, look, I really do want to give it another read, but it kind of has me wondering, is there much left to come true, really? And, the next part now, I think, possibly, on a sort of funny note, but Ready Player One may be the 1984 for the next, kind of 20, 40 years.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Because with the economy going the way it is, and Apple about to release that new big VR headset, that's going to bring VR into the forefront of, social life. Well, internal, private social life, but, can't afford to go on a holiday? Well, now you can do it from the lounge. Don't have big TV? Now you can do it from the lounge. Want to go to the cinema? Do it from your lounge room. Want to hang out with your friends in a cool park? Do it from the comfort of your lounge room. It is that concept is remarkably coming truer than I think we expected. But we'll wait and see. You never know.
You do never know. So in the meantime, still, words are our thing. So I've got some words to share with you, and 2 words from the fabulous John Koenig, who makes words up. And I thought I'd share the etymology of the words as well. So the first word is xenosyne. Zenosyne. And I've actually been talking to Zena Shafter today. So I thought, I'll just get xenosyne, that's good. And this is the sense that time keeps going faster. Now, the etymology is from Greek, xeno being derived from Zeno's paradox, which asks how a person can walk from one point to the other if they must first carry out a series of ever-shrinking steps. And Mnemosyne, which is the personification of memory in ancient Greek mythology, how can we live our lives with each passing year feeling shorter than the one before? So there you go. That's kind of where he sort of threw it together. And so Xenosyne is about how as a kid you run around so fast, the world around you seems to stand still. You know, a summer holiday can stretch forever. But then with each birthday we circle back and cross the same point around the sun. We wish each other many happy returns. But you soon feel the circle begins to tighten and you realise it's a spiral and you're already halfway through. Well, for some of us, like me, perhaps a little bit further. And even when you sit still, it feels like you're running somewhere. So there you go, Xenosyne.
Interesting.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always of the belief that as soon as you remove stimulus, then time goes quicker, or even if it goes slower, the overall concept goes quicker. Whereas, you know, a workday can go pretty fast, but if you were to suddenly get plonked in a foreign city and were to walk around and to visit here and visit there, by the end of the day, it seems like a huge day. You've done so much and it's gone forever. And, so much stuff you've never seen before. But but I'm also, you know, I like that sort of mental visual trick you can play yourself where you can run faster and faster and faster, but mathematically every step you take, you're halfway to the finish line. And so therefore you never actually reach it. So
no. And I must just say I'm feeling Xenosyne more and more as I age, because I reckon that damn spiral's going faster. All right, let me give you another one that's a little bit more writerly. So this is nodus tollens. So it's two words, nodus tollens, Tollens. And this is when your life doesn't fit into a story. And it's from Latin, meaning literally the knot that denies by denying. And in propositional logic, so listen carefully with this one, modus tollens, so with an M rather than an N, is a kind of argument that goes like this. If P, then Q. But Q is not. Therefore P must not be. So it's also known as going back and questioning your first assumption when things don't work out the way you thought they would. Sounds poetic in a kind of Vulcan kind of way. So it's the realization that the plot of your life doesn't make sense to you anymore. That although you thought you were following the arc of the story, you keep finding yourself immersed in passages that you don't understand, that you don't even seem to belong in the same genre, which requires you to go back and reread the chapters you had originally skimmed to get to the good parts, only to learn that all along you were supposed to choose your own adventure. I know you like choose your own adventure books.
Well, I love choose your own adventure books, but that idea of the universe has a particular path, or at least set a path for you, and if you do stray off, then sometimes things don't make much sense, and maybe P, there isn't no cue to follow P. So
yes. So notice tolerance, and I must say I'm a dreadful skipper of passages, which is sometimes why I think I can read so well. If there's stuff that I think, oh God, that's just description, I'm going to swish through that. But yeah, if you think about that in your life, don't just skim through it. You know, be there and be into it.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go. So there's a couple of words. Now, ending with 3 words from Otherwordly, which is by Yi Lam Mak and Kelsey Garrity Riley. So the 3 words today, this is the first one, rantipole, Rantipole, which is a noun in English, and it means a wild, reckless young person. Or you can use it as a verb, to be wild and reckless, or as an adjective, wild and reckless. So would you describe yourself as a rantipole man, Darren? Are you wild and reckless?
Yeah, absolutely, given the right circumstances.
All right, so I want you to use that in a sentence this week, or in a conversation. All right, here's number 2. No, sir. Which is a noun in French, a male word, as the French like to gender their words. Someone who goes to sleep late or not at all, or one who stays out late to revel and party.
Not something I do anymore, but something I possibly have done a lot in the past.
Yeah.
The sunrise looks different when you've also watched it set. I think that's always a very strange feeling.
All right, now here's the last word, which is a little bit tricky. So Sphallalia, which is Sphallalia, and it's in fact an English noun, and it is flirtatious talk that leads nowhere.
Ooh, for a second there I thought you were going to tell me it was a sugar replacement.
So perhaps if
but
you've
a lot
been,
more exotic.
Out or not sleeping, out revelling, you might have engaged in Sphallalia. There you go. So 3 really interesting, challenging words for you to put in a sentence or a story and get them into your brain. Now I can talk about who we interviewed, and we do have a fabulous interview coming up with the thriller author, Jess Kitching. So Jess when we had a chat to her, she had released How to Destroy Your Husband, her second book. The first one was The Girl She Was Before, and I know that her new one, Lucky Number 11, is just out on, I think it's out on pre-order. I don't think it's out quite yet, but we had a lovely chat. Poor Jess was extremely jet-lagged, and you'll hear why if you listen to our chat, but I don't think you would notice, despite the fact that she had just come back from a fabulous book tour in Denmark.
How nice would it be to be doing book tours in Europe?
I know, right? How good was that? So yes,
I am jealous, Jess.
It was lovely chatting with Jess, and we had some great things to chat about. So there you go. Time for some news, Darren.
I think so. Let's jump into news, and then we can grab a coffee and get straight to the interview. So news time, yay! Da-da-da-da-da.
So a couple of pieces of news today. This one particularly for writers, the Varuna Residential Fellowships, which offer 2 to 3 weeks of full board and accommodation at Varuna, which is a delightful place in New South Wales, including a prepared evening meal, uninterrupted time to write in your own private studio, the companionship of your fellow writers, and a 1-hour Varuna conversation with a Varuna consultant. So in 2024, Varuna are going to offer 29 Varuna residential fellowships. So jump on to varuna.com.au/fellowships and have a bit of a look. There are some fees involved just to get there, but one of the 6am writers, Katie Kells, has been there and just said it was absolutely amazing. And I know most people who've gone. I think Holden Shepherd has gone. I know he talked about Varuna as well, and I know there are a stack of others who have. You need to send between 7,000 and 10,000 words from the beginning of your manuscript, along with a synopsis of the entire work, and poetry send 10 poems, graphic novels 10 pages, children's picture books. You have to send the full manuscript. So have a look on the page. It opens the 20th of June, so it's just open, and it closes midnight on the 31st of July, and the fellowships can be taken anywhere between January and August of 2024. So there is, they tell you how to prepare your submission, there's frequently asked questions, it lays out all the fees there, and some of the fees are waived for the Jarrah Studio, First Nations and Ray Copy ASA Young Writers Fellowship. So, and if you've got some financial hardship, there's the Varuna Equity Fund may be able to cover that. So there you go. They get a travel subsidy if you live more than 300 kilometres away. So yeah, jump in and have a look, see if that is for you. If you can imagine yourself spending a week or two quietly with, in the writerly conditions with your fellow writer. No, the writerly situation, that was the word I was searching for. As I told you, my words would be gone today. So there you go. That's number one. There are other fellowships happening. So the State Library of Tasmania and Tasmanian Archives are offering a fellowship program. These fellowships are $10,000, and one's a research fellowship and one's creative, and they've been introduced to support academics, researchers, independent scholars, writers, artists, filmmakers, and digital innovators and creators who'd like to explore their collections at the State Library of Tasmania and gain new insights and generate new works. So there you go. So you can jump in and use the collections and introduce a wealth of, which is amazing collections. The library, I've been doing a little bit of a trawl on some of the libraries recently. Very good, interesting stuff. So the Creative Fellowship is open to artists in any medium, physical or digital, visual or oral, to explore the collections and use what they find to create a new work which can be exhibited or performed at the State Library. And the Research Fellowship is to support, of course, they get hundreds of researchers there all the time. This fellowship recognises the value of, understanding the examination from government, community records, images, publications and manuscripts dating from the early 1800s through to the present day. So there you go. Eligibility, it's designed for people with emerging or established careers who are over 18 years of age with a strong link to Tasmania. This could mean born in the state, established as a resident, or part of the Tasmanian diaspora. It's possible to apply from interstate, but Tasmanian residents will be given preference. And you might remember we had Tasmanian Literature Month with the global libraries and the fabulous Beck there, who was part of that Tasmanian diaspora and now lives in China. So there you go, $10,000, 1 year. Applications close on the 15th of July. So jump in and get yourself going. So one more, I came across this from the Warm Winter Reads. Okay, so it's a library thing, which is fantastic. And of course, it is bitterly cold here where we are. Any of our northern neighbours might feel that it's not quite so cold and, over in WA and not quite so cold, but I'm sure anybody sort of south of, Melbourne, down Tassie, all those kind of things are going, yeah, really cold. Okay. Between the 1st of June and the 31st of August, there's a program called Warm Winter Reads, and it's an annual reading challenge, you got to love that, where we encourage you to take more time to curl up with a great read every week. Grab a bookmark from a library branch and take part in the fortnightly challenges to keep your winter reading warm. You can register with the program, and I think Beanstack, because I haven't heard of them, and you can pick up a reading journal and you submit your reading record and you go into the running to win a prize, ages 16 plus. So I might just register because I love a little bit of a read. And if you're not sure, of course, libraries are going to tell you what to read. So the 6 things are, number 1, create a cozy reading spot. So that was the first one. And you can, make a cushion, throw a little woolly blanket there, get it all sort of ready, stack up your 2BR pile, all of those things. My reading is all over the house. But this is this fortnight, which is read aloud. Grab your favourite book and read to another person, a pet or a plant. So have you ever done that? Read to your little Moggy there?
No. I've sung quite aggressive songs at 4 a.m. when he refuses to let me sleep.
Oh, Bobby, how could you do that? But, I know he's in your story, so surely you could read them to him.
I'll use AI. Maybe that'll be his night time. When we leave or away for the night, I'll hit play and it'll be a digital Darren reading voices. Reading stories all about the bird that tried to, the cat that tried to catch the bird.
There you go. All right. And just running quickly through the next challenges, which are read a series, recommend a book you love, listen to an audiobook, or get the travel bug with a book. So the winter reading challenge, so the Warm Winter Reads, check that out. So that is my news.
Well, for news for episode 84, I thought I would just bring it back to some books. And, obviously we are called Australian Book Lovers, and I've just had a bit of a look to see. We have some magnificent titles on the website. We've also got some brand new titles that we'll be talking about in the cafe. But in this, for the news, I thought of referring to a website called artshub.com.au, which is artshub.com.au, just to run through a quick little list of some of the fantastic Australian novels that are coming out or have been released between January and June of 2023. So there is, and these are the fiction. I'm going through some fiction titles for this news. So we've got Shirley by Ronnie Scott. And so that's described as, after his celebrated debut, The Adversary, Scott returns with a new novel about the search for meaning in a world where the fracturing of ambitions, work and purpose, real estate and home, family and love has left us uncertain how to recognise ourselves. So interesting title there, Shirley by Ronnie Scott. We also have Funny Ethics by Shirley Lee. So there we go, there's a bit of synchronicity. the Shirley was the title and now Shirley's the author. Funny Ethics by Shirley Lee. Lee is already being compared to Alice Pung thanks to her debut novel set in Western Sydney that tracks the world of Sylvia Nguyen, a child of Vietnamese refugees. This coming-of-age book is about square pegs and round holes, those who belong and those on the Fringes. So that's Funny Ethnics by Shirley Lee. There's also Little Plum by Laura McPhee Brown. So this is a sophomore novel about the anxieties and hopes of upcoming motherhood as Coral ruminates on the little plum growing within her. So that's Little Plum by Laura McPhee Brown. And we have A Country of Eternal Light, I like that title, by Paul Dalgarno. And so this is the third book from Paul Dalgarno, novelist and managing editor of Arts Hub's sister site Screen Hub. And it's inventive and playful as it follows the life and beyond of Margaret Bryce, deceased mother of twins, from 1945 to 2021. The book roams from wartime Germany to Thatcher's Britain to modern-day Scotland, Australia and Spain. And of course here on the website you have The Death of John Lacey by Ben Hobson, obviously someone we've had the pleasure of chatting to. And of course that's an Australian western set in Ballarat's goldfields. The Death of John Lacey is a story of greed, power and violence balanced with brotherly love and a dissection of the meaning behind mercy and justice. You could definitely take a bit more of a look at that title in our historic fiction and I believe mysteries and thrillers on the Australian Book Lovers website. We have Fed to the Red Birds by Regine Collins, a debut novel set in Iceland. This book tells the story of everyday magic, both dark and light, of families and the shadows they can cast, of the delights and dangers of the imagination. So, And I'll finish up with this one, Once a Stranger by Zoya Patel. This is a novel about family and loss. Once a Stranger also explores what it means to step outside the boundaries set for you. Ayat has been estranged from her sister and mother for 6 years, following her fight against her sister's arranged marriage and her entry into a relationship frowned upon by Indian Muslim tradition. And that is Once a Stranger by Zoya Patel. Whole heap more to discover. So if you want to know what's just coming out and you want to expand that whole reading menu, you can visit artshub.com.au. So a quick little bit of news from me. Besides the fact that I'm actually recording this on a brand new PC, so I'm looking forward to getting some editing done a little bit quicker. Not the stuff I do. I can only do so much at some speed, but it's going to be fun watching a process go blah, 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 real quick instead of go to get a coffee while the poor little laptop struggles. So that's exciting news too. But nonetheless, shall we jump into the cafe, grab a coffee?
Let's jump into the cafe.
Before the awesome interview. Cool.
Yes.
Pretty cold. I'm going to find a cafe with a fire. Let's go.
Yeah. And it's back to the Readers Cafe to hear a little bit about what I've been reading and what we're offering for other readers. But first of all, we need something warm and definitely somewhere with a fireplace. I stoked up the fire before I came in to do some recording, Darren, so I am with you. I want a cafe with a fireplace and a hot cup of tea. I'll be happy then.
Yeah,
how about you?
Pretty close. I've definitely got the fire going, but in my little imaginary cafe today, even though I've got the ambience, we got the jazz, I got the crowd in the background, but mine is also, I'm actually in an opal mine out in the middle of the desert. Yeah, and I've got a nice cup of chicken noodle soup. So let's go very vanilla, and just letting the wild weathers of Antarctic's winter that's blowing over us at the moment rage across the surface, while I bunker down in the little Opal Cave Cafe. There we go. There's a cool name. So, but yes.
All right, let me tell you about my reading since the last episode. And, it's getting a little dark, I would just say, because, fortunately or unfortunately, I've been a little bit busy with work. And so my reading has been a little bit more confined to audiobooks. I have a stack of other books that I'm on the go with, but they are just still on the go. So I finished Crimson Lake by Candice Fox, who is an Australian thriller writer. And then I just was absolutely loving her voice. So then I wanted to do the second one in that series. But of course, that wasn't available. So then I ended up, I get my audiobooks from the library, thank you Goldfields Library. I read or listened to The Murder Rule by Dervla McTernan. Now, that was all about revenge, and I know we're going to chat a little bit about revenge because that's something that Jess Kitching writes about in her story. So The Murderer by Dervla McTurnan. Yeah, again, scary. Then Redemption Point, which was Crimson Lake #2 by Candice Fox. Thank you, Candice. I love the gentleman who reads it. He's a Kiwi actor, so a Maori gentleman who, if you see his face, I think it's Lani Tipu is the gentleman's name, and he's got a great voice for audiobooks, and it's just fantastic. So finished Redemption Point, which was Crimson Lake #2. I'm not going to give anything away, spoilers people, but it is based primarily up in Cairns in the rainforest, so it's hot and sticky. There's crocodiles, there's all sorts of things, and there's, lots of people dying up there, perhaps more so than actually die in Cairns, but there you go. So I'm just begun Crimson Lake #2 when I was doing my exercise this morning. Crimson Lake #3, which is, I can't even remember the name of it, but yeah, really loving the audio player's voice, and loving Candice Fox's plot. There you go. And it's all getting a bit dark, so I might need to read something a bit lighter just to get myself out of the murder vibe.
No, that's just the intro to the full symphony. See, go darker and darker. And
I know we are approaching the winter solstice. We're very close. So what about what's on the Australian Book Lovers? What have we got new and fabulous?
Yeah, definitely. So as always, sitting here in the cafe, good chance to just have a quick chat about some of the super cool titles that authors have been so generous to list on the website. And look, this one is hot off the press, so just been basically just been submitted, and I think we're going to learn a little bit more about it possibly later in the writer's lounge, but I'll leave that as a mystery for now. But I would like to first spotlight the book called Blood Fever by none other than Laurie Bell, under our science fiction, of course, genre. And Blood Fever is as follows. Mitch Janelle is a disgraced hunter who wants to find out who set her up for murder. Zeth Wen made the worst mistake of his life, and now space crews are full of children are dead. Rel Charlie was a child of alien occupation and is now a man facing prejudice at every turn. When the PIs are forced to team up to solve the gruesome murders of a mid-level tech smuggler, no one is happy. But as the clues piece together and the bodies pile up, the three must work together if they are to prevent a shocking conspiracy to kill millions. As Zeth and Rel face their demons to prevent a bloodbath, Mish must wrestle with a voice that has lived inside her mind since she was locked away, one that whispers, "Kill them all." And this is an electrifying sci-fi thriller from the fantastic author of Whitefire, Boss from Hell, and the Stones of Power series, and that is Blood Fever by Laurie Bell. And again, you can find that under our sci-fi, and wow, there we go, brand new release from Laurie, so very exciting stuff.
She is doing really well, Laurie, isn't she?
Oh, stratosphere, exploding through it. That is so good, yeah.
What else you got?
I have got a new book from Catherine Mccullagh, and this is under our historical fiction, so a bit of a turn from the sci-fi. This is called Resistance and Revenge, just to play on our revenge theme today. There we go.
It's all about revenge.
Yeah. So if you like historical fiction, definitely check this book out. So Resistance and Revenge. Have we become like them, Simon? Before the war, I could never have condoned a killing. But tonight, I not only condoned it, I was complicit. I was helpful. What's happened to us? Rural England, 1941, and Louisa Carmody is trapped in a dirty war of resistance as her country struggles under the heel of a brutal invader. In the dilapidated local village, trust is in short supply, and the need to survive trumps all loyalties. From the crumbling mansion that is a home, a ragtag resistant group pits its meagre forces against the might of the invader. Hunted by the enemy and betrayed by informers paid in blood money, the resistors know they cannot win. But they can exact a bloody revenge, and it is this that drives them even harder. Gradually, Louisa feels herself begin to change. Now she, too, seeks revenge. Resistance and Revenge is the story of a village in the grip of occupation and of those who have the courage to fight back. It is also the story of ordinary people, of people damaged by war, but determined to win back their freedom, no matter the cost. But in this war within a war, that cost may also involve sacrificing their own humanity. So pretty heavy themes there, and that is Resistance and Revenge by Catherine Mccullagh under our historical fiction. So let's go from historical fiction, let's go to a bit of murder, mystery, thriller. And we've got a book called A Wicked Design, a Belinda Lawrence mystery by author Brian Kavanagh. So I think we've already got a couple of titles from Brian, so this is a new one. Belinda Lawrence returns to her hometown of Melbourne to discover a murder that's close to her heart. A murder which leads to the seat of political power, Parliament House. The various threads of deceit and intrigue are gradually unravelled and, with Hazel Withby at her side, Belinda is confronted by warring political factions. The mystery deepens with the discovery of a priceless historical item of value to both political powers and which places Belinda's life in jeopardy. The gregarious major, an enigmatic university professor, two colourful antique sellers, eccentric retired music hall entertainers, and Belinda's partner, Mark Salinger, all immersed in the scheming and covert encounters besieging Belinda as she solves her most challenging mystery. Whoa, there's a lot of ingredients in that cup of soup.
Indeed, yes.
And that is A Wicked Design, a Belinda Lawrence mystery by Brian Kavanagh. And bit of a spotlight on some fantastic new titles. So jump on the website, check it, take a look, jump in the mystery thriller, jump in historical fiction, and of course jump on our science fiction. And have a look at those latest releases and have a look at all the titles there that you may not have had a chance to look at yet.
Indeed. And of course, if you are a Book Lovers subscriber, you would be in the running to win a copy of Blood Fever, as well as a copy of Boss from Hell by the lovely Laurie Bell, who was very kindly donated a paperback copy for us to put up for, I was going to say auction, but no, put up for giveaways for our readers. And the delightful David Cohen, who we'll be chatting to in the near future, has given us a copy of The Terrible Event, which is a series of humorous stories, I think it's how it's described. So, yeah.
Did you get a submission for the Blood Fever prize from Darren Casanova? Because that's not me, but...
No.
Yeah, okay.
No, but
do you know if he won yet?
No, he hasn't. But I was having a little giggle at some of I asked people who were in the giveaway for David's book to tell me humorous stories. I have been having a little giggle at the entries that are coming in. And yeah, the Boss from Hell, there's some terrible stories about there, terrible bosses out there. We could start a whole series, or whatever. I think that was a movie, wasn't it? Terrible Bosses?
I have no idea. But I've definitely got a story or two. I think we all do.
Yes. Yeah, right. Let's move on to something a little bit more cheery. That we've got to go and get home get started with the next thing.
Well, I'll put down my billy can and scrape the last of my noodles out of my chicken soup, kick the fire out, and head back up to the stormy kisses from Antarctica. And let's get meat on the other side. Cool. All right. So I think maybe the perfect time for you to introduce the wonderful interview.
Indeed, I shall. As I mentioned, we are chatting with the delightful Jess Kitching. Now, Jess is a thriller author. She's originally from the north of England, but she does live in Sydney. She has, she's actually got a 3-book deal, and we talked about her first 2 books. And as I mentioned earlier, her 3rd book is out there. Without any more spoiling, let's go and talk with Jess Kitching. Hello, book lovers. Very delighted to have with me today a slightly jet-lagged Jess Kitching. Hello, Jess.
Hi, yes, slightly jet-lagged is definitely the right way to describe me today. But thank you so much for having me.
You are most welcome, but for a very good reason, which we'll go into later. Now, I am coming to listeners today from the lands of the Wurrung, the Wurundjeri people down in Victoria. Where are you today, Jess, or do you remember where you are?
Yeah, still on a plane. No, I'm joking. I'm on the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation.
Beautiful. Okay. So here we are, about to chat about 2 really amazing books. If I talk a little bit about Jess just to begin, because then as long as she doesn't nod off, we'll be good. Now, Jess is a thriller author, originally from the north of England, as you will hear by her voice. She now lives in Sydney. And she signed with Kingsley Publishers for a 3-book deal. And we're going to talk today about the girl she was before, as well as, you know, it's a little bit tricky, how to destroy your husband. And so, you know, just be aware, people, that there will be some meanness happening here today.
Yeah, some juicy content.
So Jess's life ambition was to be an author, a dream that was cemented when she met the wonderful Jacqueline Wilson at a book signing as a child. So there you go, people. Take your children to book signings. Very important. If she could be on any TV show, it would be Taskmaster, which I think I've seen glimpses of. And okay, I'll talk to you about that. Her favourite places that she's ever visited are New York and Iceland. And when she's not writing, she spends 99% of her time chatting to readers on Instagram and collecting book recommendations. And I will admit, listeners, that we've just run through a dozen books that I've just bought of late. And so, yes, I don't know how many of those will add to Jess's list, but there you go. Jess, where do we begin?
From the beginning, but I'm like, when does that happen? With Jacqueline Wilson? Is that the beginning? Is it?
Yeah, it is that the beginning. You know, where did that kind of love of wanting to put words on paper come from for you?
I was always the kid that read and, you know, had a very vivid imagination.
Yeah.
I was the one on the playground who would come up with all the ideas, all the games, or my Barbies had a life that was more interesting than any soap opera could ever be. So I think I've always had a flair for the dramatics, shall we say. But then Jacqueline Wilson was my favourite author. She was my absolute idol. I used to love how, you know, a lot of time children's books, I wouldn't say patronise children, but they always felt very fluffy and light, whereas her stories would talk about real serious issues. So someone like growing up in care or growing up with a parent with really severe mental illness, and they'd be wrapped up in a children's story. So you felt like you were kind of learning about the world in a way that I'd not really explored in other books. I think it was that kind of realization that, you know, you could talk about really hard-hitting things and wrap it up in either an entertaining story or, in my case, a hopefully twisty, juicy thriller. And then when I met her, she did this amazing talk. She would talk for an hour, and I queued for so long to meet her, and she was just the nicest woman in the world. And I was a bit like, so you can do this for a living? You can live in your imagination? And yeah, that was where it all started. It wasn't as smoothly as, you know, just writing a book and it happened, but it was definitely, it's always been a dream.
Before we get into more about the writing, tell me about Taskmaster. I don't know the show, but what is involved?
It's, I don't even know where to begin with this show. It's the best show on television. If you've not watched it, you should. It's basically, you get 5 different comedians, and the Taskmaster, who's Greg Davies, who is just one of my favourite comedians, sets them some really wild tasks that they've got to do, and you basically compete for points. So each week you have to bring in a prize from home, and then at the end of the episode, whoever wins the episode gets to take all the prizes. So this week, the one that just came out, it was the best thing in your home that weighs almost a kilogram. And then so just really random things like that, but it's so funny. It's just a comedy show, very light-hearted.
No, so easy one to listen to and watch. Yeah, very good.
Well, I spend a lot of my time planning fictional murders, so I think you know, I've got to have a release somewhere.
I'm glad that you don't say yes, but I'm secretly, you know, Dexter was that one that used to go and kill people, even though he was a pathologist or something, wasn't he? So, no, I'm glad that's okay. Let's talk about the books that you've got out at the moment, because the conversation will go here, there, and everywhere. So I'm going to read people the blurb for The Girl She Was Before. Now, this was published in October 31st, 2021. So Nat lives a picture-perfect life, but it wasn't always this way. A victim of horrific bullying when she was a teenager, Nat will do anything to keep distance between the girl she was before and the woman she is now. But when her best friend is murdered and people begin to point their finger at her, Nat's new life quickly unravels. To Nat, it's no surprise the crime happened at the same time as the return of her biggest tormentor, Chrissy Summers, a woman with a violent streak who destroyed lives when she was younger and isn't afraid to do it again. Face to face with the past she so firmly keeps behind her, Nat's sanity wavers as her determination to reveal Chrissy as the monster she knows her as rises to dangerous heights. The question is, can Nat prove Chrissy is a killer, or will Chrissy get to Nat and her family before she has the chance? You can't outrun the past. Whoa. So there you go.
Yeah, I was going to end that with dun, dun,
Dun,
dun.
dun, dun. Totally dun, dun, dun. So tell me, where was the inspiration for the girl she was before?
Yeah, so it's obviously hard to show this on a podcast, but I actually have a facial birthmark on my forehead. And outside of doing writing, I do a lot of advocacy work for facial differences and beauty diversity, and just kind of talking about the fact that, you know, we might all look different, but everybody's kind of unique and special in their own way. And I was doing an interview with a UK charity called More Than a Face, and we were just talking about some of the experiences that I'd gone through when I was a child. So, for example, I've had a coin thrown at my head for target practice. I was told I was like the ugly Jess of the year group. My student job was to work at the checkouts of the local supermarket, and a mother and her teenage son spent the entire time telling me all the like horrific accidents they thought it looked like I'd happened. And I was like, well, this is just my face. This is, you know, how I go out into the world. And the woman interviewing me said, oh, I'm really sorry you were bullied. And I was a bit taken aback because I never really saw myself as someone who was bullied. But then when I think about it, you know, those times when you look in the mirror and you're a bit like, oh, I hate the way I look today, or you know, you just talk horribly to yourself. I realised that all the voices that would tell me that were never my own. It wasn't me saying it to myself. It was the people that I went to school with, or the people that had kind of said those things. And I realised, you know, at the point I was a woman in my mid-20s, and I was like, that still has such an effect on me. And I didn't see myself so much as a bullying victim. I mean, now I look back and go like, yeah, actually, I might have had friends, but I still had that side of things. But that was the inspiration. That was the moment I started to think, well, if you were someone that had been truly horrifically bullied, how would that impact you in your later life? Because it strips away kind of your confidence in yourself, and any sense of security you have gets taken away to an extent. And then, you know, a lot of people talk about bullying as if it just happens when you're a child, you should be over it by now. But actually, it is quite a significant trauma.
Lays down some fairly deep wounds in your psyche, doesn't it? That you can't just paper over them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as a society, we kind of do almost brush it over with children. We're kind of a bit like, oh, you know, people are just doing it because they're unhappy, or they're just jealous, or we have all these things that kind of brush over it. But actually, when you're the person that's having those things done to you or said to you, it sticks with you for a really long time. And building that confidence up takes a lot. It's a long piece of work on yourself.
So, Jess, how much of you is in the character of Nat?
It's a very interesting question. There are certain parts that are similar, but I think Nat's very much someone who would maybe be me or have aspects of me from a few years ago. So Nat is someone that correlates her self-worth with her life on social media. So she's an artist, but she also has kind of an Instagram social media following. At first it started as a way to sell her art, but then it's kind of grown into almost like a lifestyle brand. And the more likes she gets, the more people are telling her how great she is, the more she kind of feels good about herself. Whereas I think there was a point in time where that was something that I felt I needed. You know, when I was a teenager, you'd post a photo of yourself and going out in a nice dress, and you're like, oh, I don't know, 20 people have liked it, I feel really good. But through a lot of self-work, I think I've overcome that. But for Nat, she's definitely a lot more insecure than I am. But there are definitely some similarities, I would say.
It's almost what you mentioned about your, childhood heroine, you're the author who wrote those books, that she was able to put some serious conversations into the framework, or of a children's story. And it sounds as though you're using the framework of the story, the thriller, to actually let that character arc develop, but still say something serious about bullying.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of my biggest aims with my writing. Like, I love thrillers. They're my favourite genre to read. Yeah. I find them so engrossing and so immersive. But they do often kind of get dismissed as almost like popular fiction, or, really commercial fiction. But actually, they have so much merit. In a thriller, what you're doing is you're putting a normal person into the most extreme circumstance and seeing how far they can go, and you're pushing kind of the limits of psychology and, you know, what things can happen and how someone's brain can change and turn. And I find that fascinating to explore anyway, but especially in the context of talking about quite serious issues like bullying. And in my next book, How to Destroy Your Husband, we talk about kind of toxic masculinity and the impact of that. So I love thrillers for that, but it's definitely been an intentional aim to kind of weave almost a really important talking point into what is hopefully a gripping and entertaining story. Hopefully.
And yeah, I must admit that there's, you know, being on Australian book clubbers, you know, normally I'm a fantasy and science fiction reader, love those. But I find that having interviewed a number of, particularly, you know, female crime thriller writers, so yourself, Petronella McGovern, Danuka Mackenzie, Ashley Kalajian-Blunt, and some fantastic stories that they've written. And I don't always get a chance to read people's books because I'm, you know, do have to earn a living and do all those things and remember to eat and hang out the washing. But it's just, they are just compelling. And what I particularly like about them, as opposed to in the olden days, I used to read thrillers. They were primarily written by blokes, let's face it. They had the handle on the genre. But the ones written by women seem to be, and I'm being probably unfair to the blokes who I haven't read any of late, but the ones by women seem to attract me because they are about people, exactly as you said. They are in these really tense, vulnerable, challenging situations, and it's how they react. And quite often it's not the way you expect, or it's in a very human way. And I think that's just brilliant. When it's also then still in an intrigue, and I can never guess the person. You know, my daughter who loves Hercule Poirot and Agatha Christie, she goes, "Oh, Mum, you can see who it is already." Oh, no, I can't. So I'm loving the thrillers. So it sounds like The Girl She Was Before has to definitely go on the to be read list. So there you go.
You'll have to let me know what you think of the ending. My favourite part is when people read it and message me while they're reading it. And I can always tell what part they're up to, because then there's this big, what? Yeah, you've read it.
All right. Now, not only is the book has been out since 2021, but there is another whole non-English speaking country who has, you know, embraced The Girl She Was Before. Tell us how that happened.
Oh, it still feels like a dream. So, yeah, the reason I'm jet lagged, or part of the reason I'm jet lagged, is I've just come back from Europe. So I did some kind of book events in the UK where I'm originally from. And then, a Danish publisher called Lindback and Lindback, they basically bought the Danish translation rights for my book, which was a message I read about 7 times before I processed it. And so I've just actually come back from meeting them. We were there for the launch. I've done some signings there, and I got the opportunity to speak at a huge crime festival called Krimimessen, and it was honestly incredible. I met people like Chris Carter, Alice Feeney, Ellie Griffiths. I was
fangirling all over.
Not even slightly being cool about it. On my second day, I finished talking, and CJ Tudor was talking after me, and she came and listened to the last 15 minutes of my talk, and my mouth was the driest it has ever been, because I was so starstruck. But it was incredible.
That's good. So how long was the process from, yes, they brought the rights, to now here you are, the book's out, you're signing?
Probably about a year. So the book hadn't been out that long before we got approached about them taking on the rights. I think they'd seen it on social media and obviously bought a copy and read it, and then reached out. So it's probably been about a year in the process. And they've bought the rights for my second book, and that was going to be released in June next year. So maybe about a year in between.
In terms of the translation, do you know any Danish? Were you able to chat with the readers, or many, as I know many European people have 2, 3, 4 languages, at their fingertips?
I mean, I picked up very rudimentary Danish. I definitely cannot take credit for speaking Danish, but everybody there spoke wonderful English, so I did all my talks in English, and then other writers like Chris Carter, their talks were in English too. But then all the readers I met in the bookstores and at the festival, they all spoke brilliant English, and I've actually made friends with a few, and we're still messaging now, so it's been such a lovely experience.
Excellent.
I'm itching to go back next year. I'm like, please invite me again.
if they've got the rights to your second book, let's tell readers about How to Destroy Your Husband. This was published on October 23rd, 2022. I gulp as I stare at the stranger before me. Who is this man I had wanted to spend the rest of my life with? Cassie Edwards swore she'd never fall in love. Then she met Jamie. He changed everything, and Cassie's never been happier. But with less than 1 month to go to her wedding, Cassie discovers Jamie is cheating on her with his colleague. Blinded by rage, Cassie makes it her mission to seek revenge on the pair. When Cassie looks deeper into her fiancé's life, she soon realises being faithful isn't the only thing he's lying about. As her hunt for the truth takes her to some of the darkest corners of the internet, Cassie learns just how little she knows about the man she shares her life with. It leaves her wondering just one thing. Is Jamie someone she should destroy or someone she should fear instead? Dun 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 again.
Yeah,
You know,
I was going to say that another dun dun dun.
Where did How to Destroy Your Husband come from?
Well, I feel like I should point out I have a partner and he is okay. He is alive. At my book launch, I almost pulled him on the stage just to be like, everybody, he's fine.
Yes.
But I've always been one of those people, I don't know if it's just being a writer or just being, you know, someone that really likes to, if you make friends with someone, I like to really get to know people. I'm not very good with small talk. But I always have been fascinated with the question of, if you knew that someone was cheating on someone, would you tell them?
Yeah.
And it's such a fascinating question. When you ask people, they have so many different answers. So some people are like, I'd tell anybody, or some people, you know, if it's my best friend, then maybe I'd tell them. There's all these different kind of rules and hierarchies and structures to it that I find interesting anyway. And then I love the idea of a revenge story. Revenge stories are always my favourites. But then there is the question of, is revenge ever worth it? At the end of it, do you feel fulfilled? And it was kind of the hybrid of those two ideas, and then kind of mixed with just a lot of the toxic masculinity and misogyny and things that I was seeing online. I thought I could write something really interesting here. And it was actually a lot of fun to write, even if it does get quite dark.
Yeah, okay. So tell me, is revenge worth it? What are your thoughts?
Ooh, very good question. For me personally, no, I don't think it is. I don't really think I've ever taken revenge in my life, or if I have, I've definitely not done a Cassie level of revenge. I think it's one of those things that in the moment of anger, you feel it. You think like, oh, it would be so fun or something to do that. But I actually think it takes more of a toll on the person kind of committing the revenge than it does the person you put it on. And I just don't think you'll ever feel satisfied. Yeah,
I would have to agree with you. Having lived a long life and worked in some, you know, difficult sectors, there is always people that sometimes I can't understand why they would do the things that they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most perplexing, is people will often do things to you that you would never in a million years imagine doing to somebody else. And yes, well, I know it's a made up story. I think that perplexing nature of it is, well, I can't even imagine myself doing those kind of things.
Yeah. And it's also, I think, once you start doing something like that, where do you draw the line? Like the thing with Cassie is that she starts off being like, oh, I'm going to, you know, destroy these people. But as, like I said in the blurb, as the more she finds out about Jamie, the more she realises he's not who he says he is. But then she almost matches that level, and you go, but where do you stop? Like, if you start doing that, you know, it's quite a slippery slope to committing something quite extreme, I think.
Okay, and also within there, you mentioned toxic masculinity, and I know our readers know that we ask our authors to send us some information before they start, and it's something that you talk about people's experiences and you know, book clubs and those kind of things. So tell us, what is your message, or what are the main things that you want to share about what you've experienced or seen?
I think one of the main things is so I love social media. Social media has afforded me so many brilliant opportunities, and I've met so many incredible people. You know, I wouldn't have my Danish book deal without social media, I don't think. Like, there are so many brilliant things about it. But I think when we talk about things like toxic masculinity or certain kind of negative parts of the internet, we always talk about it as if it's like on the dark web or some really hidden place. But actually, just general Instagram feeds or comment sections on Facebook or under you know, news articles, they can be really toxic. I think sometimes we don't understand the power of the internet. Like yesterday I went on Twitter and it said Meghan Markle's trending in Australia, and there were 1,200 tweets in the last hour just insulting her, and there wasn't, she'd not done anything. I was like, how are we all so kind of addicted to these screens and putting out this toxic content without realizing, that this is a person we're talking about? And that fascinates me. Like I say, I love social media, but I think that part of the internet is something that it scares me a little bit. I think rightly so. I think if you weren't scared of that side of the internet, I don't think you're looking at it properly.
Yeah, viral really is viral, isn't it? Because it gets into every corner.
Yeah. And, like negative views and hatefulness isn't bred in like the dark web. Sometimes it is bred on just like the comment section of a newspaper article, or often I look at, for the inspiration or some of my research for how to destroy your husband, I'd look at the comment sections under kind of famous female celebrities' pictures on Instagram, and some of the quotes that are in the book are actually just direct comments from people's Instagram feeds, and it would be men who had, their wife and their children in their profile pictures sending really extremely sexual messages to someone they'd never met on the internet and posting it on their comments, and that's, it's not hidden, it's there, and that's the scariest thing about it.
And seem to be okay in some circles. Yeah,
because I think we almost think the internet's separate from life. It's you can put your phone away, it's almost like a fake reality, but actually that fake reality has very real consequences. For the person reading that, they could be really intimidated, it could upset them. It's not as kind of virtual as we think it is.
Too true. It is absolutely everywhere, and having grown up in an era where we didn't have phones, mobiles, or the internet, it is a completely different existence. It is, just everywhere. Okay, let's switch to something a little bit cheerier.
I was thinking, I was like, I promise I'm a really happy, upbeat person. I bet you're staring out of the window like, wow, this took a dark turn.
It did, but that's all right, because writing is everything, and it's okay to have those the melancholic discussions as well. But tell me about the best response you've ever had to your writing.
Anytime anyone messages me, I'm like the most amazed I've ever been. But the fact that somebody would choose to spend a section of their time reading something that I've imagined in my head for a year, it's the most incredible feeling, and it still blows my mind. So whenever anybody says I've read your book, I'm like, wow. Like, thank you. But actually the most incredible messages and stuff have always been about bullying. So because The Girl She Was Before was so centered around that theme, just the fact that people kind of reach out and say, one, that they think it was handled sensitively, but also to share their own experiences with me, it really means a lot, because I know it's not the easiest thing to talk about, but sometimes when someone else has gone through it, it just helps you feel less alone. So I really think it's a really humbling feeling, but also just something I love.
And as you say, it is absolutely just gobsmackingly amazing to writers when people go, I read your book, and you go, you read the book, okay.
I'm still really uncool about it. I don't know, those people that are just, they can be like, oh yeah, you've read my book, wow. Yeah. Whereas I'm just like, my book? What? That thing I did? And when people ask me the title of my book, I almost whisper it. I think I definitely need to get a bit more owning it, a bit more confident with it.
All right, now, being a thriller author with mysteries and things, you hide secrets in your writing. Tell us about that.
Oh, well, you know how Disney does Easter eggs and they like link films and stuff? Well, I thought, that's so fun. So I create them in my book. I should do some crossovers between the books, actually. That's a really interesting thought. But it's more things. So I'm quite interactive with people on social media, and I'll talk about, the things I've watched or places I've gone. So I'll put, for example, in How to Destroy Your Husband, there's one of my favourite bars in Leeds, the city I grew up in. That's mentioned in the book. And then a character from Stranger Things, I used their surname and different things like that. Just like little cheeky details. And then some people message and they're like, is that person you're talking about? And like, yes, you got it.
Very good.
I even made a bingo card, I think, for How to Destroy Your Husband as well.
That's good. I love a bingo card. I used to bingo card in a workshop I was teaching the other day about facilitation, and everybody just loved it. It was good fun. There's always that little competition, and oh yes, that's it.
Yeah.
But, let alone that.
And then when you can't get one, you're like, oh, where's the last one? What is the last one?
That is excellent. You have mentioned that you love thrillers, and that's what you mostly read. Do you have a favourite character these days? A favourite author these days?
I feel like that's the hardest question because everyone's so fantastic. I've always been a big fan of Lisa Jewell. I find Lisa Jewell books really good because they always have a twist at the end, so it has a neat conclusion, but then there seems to be at the last bit something that you go like, oh, could there be a sequel with this? Or oh, has that answered that? And that's something I've done in my own writing. I get so many messages like, when's the next book coming out? Whereas I write standalones, so I don't know, maybe in the future. But I do like that. I like the extra twist. Just when you think it's all sorted, there's another bit.
Yeah. A plotter, a pantser, or somewhere in between?
I've got to say a pantser, but I do think I'm a little bit in between. But definitely, I imagine the ending. The ending always comes to me first. I never start at the beginning of a story. I don't know how anyone does. It's an incredible skill that they can get from the beginning to the end. I have to work backwards. And then I just imagine it really over and over again, like it's almost a film in my mind. And then I write what I've imagined. So I guess in a way that's planning, but it's just more all based in my head.
Fair enough. It's just organising the chaos.
Yeah, there is a lot of chaos. I make a playlist as well to match like the mood of what I'm writing. So I do a lot of daydreaming. I think to be honest, it's just an excuse to daydream for about 3 weeks. But then, when you're imagining it like a film, you've got your film soundtrack going. It's a nice time to be a writer.
It is a nice time to be a writer. Yeah, there is a lot of great music out there as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's the third book? What's coming up? Is that an idea? Are you able to share a little bit about that?
I am actually just finishing my very, very final edits on this. It had been finished before, but then I went to Denmark and I was like, ooh, I just want to change one little part of it. So over the next few days, I'm just finalising that. But it's a little bit... I've been very lucky with my publisher, Kingsley Publishers, that they've allowed me to write within the thriller genre rather than being very set in you have to write a detective fiction story. I've been able to play around with it a little bit. So my third book's actually based on a serial killer survivor. So it's a bit more about that. So it is quite dark, but I'm very excited about it.
And when can we expect that on the bookshelves?
Sometime later this year. I don't have an exact date, but sometime later this year, definitely.
Okay, something to look forward to. How did you find the traditional publishing? How did Kingsley Publishers approach you? Where did that come from? Go back a step.
Yeah, so it was actually it was one of my friends that sent it to me. She sent me a link and said, "Hey, this publisher, they're looking for submissions," and I was a bit burned out by the whole querying process. You know how it can be.
Yes.
the endless almost there, or this is good, but we've got something similar on the books, and you're a bit like, oh. It was a friend who I'm forever grateful for sending me the link, and then I reached out, and luckily for me, they loved it. But that was part of a very long up and down journey, I'm sure most authors are.
Yeah. So, Jess, are you ever tempted to write outside of the thriller genre?
Yeah, I'd love to write a contemporary fiction novel. I actually have a few ideas, but it's just finding the time to, get your head out of murders and focus on something different. But I would love to do that. I think there's some incredible books that have been coming out recently, and I'd love to just explore a different genre. Just to stretch your wings a little bit. Yeah, I think it's always the best when you push yourself in new directions. I think you grow in ways you didn't realise. So I'd love to do that as a writer. Who knows, maybe one day I'll write a Jacqueline Wilson-inspired story. Ooh, yeah, very good. What is the most useful writing advice that you've been given? It sounds so simple, but it's actually the hardest thing. The most useful advice I've ever been given is to just get the words down. I know that sounds easy because you're writing, but I have a terrible thing of getting about 40,000 words into a manuscript and then wanting to go back to the beginning and edit it because I've got some new ideas or wanting to change things. I can never seem to get the whole thing down in, in one coherent go. But then I think once you do, you can always go back and edit something and make it better. Or redraft is so important. But when you just float around messing with the first 4 chapters again and again and never progressing past the halfway point, it's not really the best way to write a book. So
it's not.
Get the words down.
Sometimes once you get to the end, you go, oh, actually, that beginning's not going to work at all. I'll have to redo it again anyway.
Yeah, but that's the best bit about the edit. But I always find if I don't get to the end, I never get there. It's one of those things, you just got to get it down. Even if, for one chapter, you just put like a sentence. In this chapter, she says this to him or something happens, and then you move on to the next one. Just get the structure and the story down in some way. Because as you're writing, things crop up all the time, don't they? Where you're like, oh, I could go back and if I put that clue in chapter 3, then it will link to chapter 7. And that's the great thing about it. But I think once you start getting caught up in that rather than just getting it down for the first time, I don't know about you, but I never finish it. I've got a graveyard of half-finished manuscripts.
Well, you might have to dig those out from time to time because it sounds like you have a great following for your work, which is brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I feel very lucky to have met so many people and things online, and everyone's just so friendly. I think when you're part of the book community, everybody just enjoys reading so much that you feel part of something really special. It's
almost like it's a voracious beast, the reader, and you just need to keep feeding it. So,
Yeah, I'm trying to get my next one out as fast as I can, I promise. When I was in Denmark and I had this idea, I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to change it. I'm sorry, everybody.
As long as it's only one tweak, I'm sure your fans will be very patient because they obviously enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. I think they'll appreciate the tweak, so it's fine. I'll have to tell them when it's done.
Now, just how much time do you have to spend on your social media, I guess, keeping your presence fresh and keeping your fans informed? Is that a big part of what you do as an author?
Yeah, I definitely say so. I think especially so I'm obviously from the UK, but living in Australia, and then I have a few fans, a few people I speak to in the US. So you actually are juggling like multiple time zones, and then now I've been to Denmark. I've met some amazing people there. So you are kind of always at some point active on there, and then creating the content and things like that. So it definitely takes some time, maybe a few hours a day, which is a lot of time to invest to your phone and to a device. But I do get a lot from it. I get to talk to incredible people, and my TBR pile has never been as long. I've never had so many amazing book recommendations.
Yeah.
But I think there are definitely times where I try to withdraw a little bit, when you're writing the heaviest part of writing your book and you just want to focus on that. But then sometimes it's just fun to go on and talk to people about books and what they're watching.
Yeah, for sure. What is your advice for people who are looking at the cover of either of your books and tossing up whether or not to buy? What would you suggest to them?
I'd say if you're a fan of twists and endings that you'll just have to talk to someone about, then I would definitely make the purchase.
Yeah.
And I know I'm biased saying that, but
you're allowed to be biased. It is your book, and I love it. The authors really love what they've done, so that's fantastic. Where can people buy your books? Where's the best spot to find them?
I think if you're wanting to buy them in like multiple different ways, so Amazon's got them in hardback, paperback, and on Kindle. So that kind of there suits all different kind of readers. But they're also available at places like Waterstones and Barnes and Noble. I was going to say Book Depository.
Booktopia, but yeah, sadly.
Yeah,
Very sad.
It's like so sad, sad. But yeah, Booktopia is another place as well.
Yeah. All right, until I think the 26th of April. So there you go. So Jess, where can people find you on the internet? What are your social media touch points?
I was going to say everywhere, but I'm joking.
Well, that would be pretty much. There are so many odd little things, quirky bits happening.
Yeah, the main platform I use, or the main platforms, are probably Instagram and Facebook. So I'd be on there under Jess Kitching Writes. A very smiley northerner, so if you find that person smiling away, that will be me. I am on Twitter as well, but I feel like I've just not got it down. You know, some people are really good at tweeting.
Yeah.
I go on there once every week and think, oh no, I've not tweeted, and then send about 12 million at once. But yeah, Instagram and Facebook are probably my main ones. So yeah, feel free to come join me and have a chat.
Yeah, very good. Any last thoughts to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think my last thought would probably just to say thank you for listening and thank you for spending this time with me. I really do appreciate it. I know there are so many amazing books and amazing authors out there, so I just appreciate anyone who's taken the time to listen to me ramble on, and hopefully I wasn't too depressing when I was talking about toxic masculinity.
No rambling at all. It was lovely to chat with you. So Jess Kitching, author of The Girl She Was Before and How to Destroy Your Husband, and an upcoming additional book, perhaps later this year, early next year. Thank you so much for spending some time with Australian book lovers.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you, Jess Kitching, for an absolutely generous and lots of facts and bits and pieces. We went a lot of different places. So despite being jet lagged and having to explain Taskmaster to me, we talked about childhood influences. Jess is a fabulous advocate for facial diversity, of course. And we talked about sort of life and books and how much of life is in books and whether your characters all have a little bit of that. But and how lucky was she to get that Danish, the foreign language contract. That was fantastic. But really, let's talk about revenge and how far are people prepared to go and where do you draw the line?
Well, first of all, Jess, thank you so much for being a part of the Australian Book Lovers podcast, and obviously, definitely pushing it to the limits there, with exhaustion and travelling from one side of the planet to the other and still doing that, so that was wonderful. And thanks for the opportunity to chat about revenge, which is a super funky subject, really, isn't it?
It is indeed. So I did a little bit of looking on revenge and what it kind of does to your brain, and I'm on the scienceofpeople.com website, and there was a study, a group of Swiss researchers wanted to know what happens in the brain when someone reaps revenge. And so they scanned the brains of people who'd just been wronged during a game in the lab. And then they gave the wronged participant a chance to punish the other person. And for a full minute, as the victims contemplated revenge, the activity in their brain was recorded. They immediately noticed a rush of neural activity in the caudate nucleus, and this is the part of the brain known to process rewards. So basically, they found that revenge in the moment is quite rewarding. However, the long-term effects, exacting revenge is a form of emotional release, and getting retribution will help us feel better. But, the act of revenge, it has the opposite effect, because instead of quenching hostility, it prolongs the unpleasantness of the original offence. And so instead of delivering justice, revenge often creates that kind of cycle of retaliation thing. So there you go.
Such a tricky line, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Because you said that, I could almost visualise, all the neurons firing up, all the synapses igniting, because you really preempt. You're starting to imagine scenarios. So your imagination's coming into play, your emotions are coming into play. You're replaying the moment that led to the decision to sit there and fantasise about revenge. You're trying to anticipate, responses and repercussions, and all these things. And but at the same time, if we didn't do that, and whether we act on it or not, that's a whole other step again. But sometimes I think, it's such a difficult line to decide which side you're going to be over, or which part of the line you're going to stand across, because there are instances in life where at some point, if you don't do anything, that can have a long-term negative effect on the way you perceive yourself. Have you become weaker? Have you become a pushover? Do you know what I mean? At what point is it always correct to not retaliate or have some sort of revenge to close the circle of justice, or do you think it should be, almost use the Christian analogy of always turn the other cheek and not let that moment echo through time, in a sense where you become, unsatisfied with the situation and seek that satisfaction that may or may not come. But it's such a human emotion to Well, when of course when I'm thinking of revenge, revenge is where you feel you've been wronged, where you're almost certain you've been wronged, or something has been completely unfair, as opposed to just something that you don't like, or a result that didn't go in your favour. That's you got to be a little bit of a psychopath to want revenge for that. But if somebody went out of their way to do something to harm or emotionally attack myself or someone close to me, then you can't help but start to think that maybe if it happens 2-3 times, you start to think about not only putting a stop to it, but maybe revenge.
Well, there's and I sense a little bit of what you're saying. I've got two things that I want to add to the conversation. One is revenge versus vengeance. So this was another kind of rabbit hole that I ended up going down. So, what's vengeance? What's the difference between vengeance and revenge? And of course, we are at the mercy of the, Western Hollywood and all those kind of things, the loner or the wronged person seeking vengeance or revenge. So according to enlightio.com, enlightio.com, the difference between vengeance and revenge, which they did in a blog on December 12th, 2022. And important to understand the difference before taking action, Darren. So in this article, they look at the definitions and so talk about whether it's better to seek forgiveness rather than retribution, etc. So vengeance is about ensuring that justice is served and that the perpetrator of a crime or injustice is held accountable for their actions. So it's about ensuring that justice is done for the victim, whether through restitution or punishment. Yeah. So the person who seeks vengeance isn't necessarily wanting to hurt the perpetrator. They're only seeking retribution, a just punishment for what happened to them. And this, of course, often involves a higher authority determining the punishment, etc., etc. Revenge, on the other hand, is an act of retaliation against someone who has wronged another person, often motivated by anger or desire to make the person who hurt make them suffer. It can be physical, it can be emotional, or spreading rumours about their reputation, those kind of things. So revenge is an act of retaliation. Vengeance is an act of retribution. So that was interesting to have a bit of a look. And they say revenge is a spontaneous reaction, whereas vengeance is often planned. So
I don't know about that. I think
is that true?
No, I don't think so, because I think they make it sound like vengeance is a moral high ground way of assuring that the balances are restored, whereas revenge is an emotional knee-jerk reaction. When the reality is usually and let's bring it to art and culture, and so many books that have revenge as their theme, or vengeance. So you can, for me, they're pretty much one and the same. In general, the reality is the world isn't just, or at least the society we've built has a false, this false charade game and false facade of having a justice system. But really, there isn't one, and it's when that becomes apparent at the expense of somebody's emotional turmoil, so that they become and when it becomes a direct intrusion into an individual's life and they're forced to recognize that there is no real justice to be found within the system, then that's where it's up to them to then balance those. They become that higher sense of authority and power, you see, because if there was
I don't think they were necessarily talking about just the justice system. I think they were talking about justice in itself, because it might be a boss or it might be management. But we have a very imperfect understanding of that. But it was interesting to think that there are nuances involved in it. I think you ask what would I do necessarily? Well, I quite like the idea of healthy revenge that Frank Sinatra suggests, which is that the best revenge is massive success. So, if you're ready for it, the next time you feel the dark tendrils of revenge creeping into your soul, take the intensity and put it towards succeeding. Put it towards your goal, put it towards hustling to get what you want, put it towards growth. So you will get the reward set of your brain pumping by thinking how sweet it will feel when you meet your goals. And it shifts the focus onto you and your mission and makes your perpetrator irrelevant, which is exactly where they should be. So there you go. And
I think there's
healthy revenge.
Yeah, I definitely think there's merit there. I mean, I was just listening to a podcast the other day, interviewing a gentleman who had been wrongly accused and spent 30 years in prison before he got out. And he was talking about, obviously how he felt about things now that he was out, and
Yeah.
he made a conscious effort to not have that sense of revenge or have any. He wants to look forward. Saying that, realistically, if we were to look at the root cause of so many ongoing conflicts, not maybe the initial spark of conflict, but the ongoing conflicts, is a vicious, eternal cycle of revenge, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The eye for the eye, well, just keeps going till there's no more eyes left. Absolutely, yeah. So there you go. That is a little bit about revenge, and thank you to Jess Kitching for getting us down that line. And also, I love she's got Easter eggs in her book. Yeah, excellent. And so Jess's third book is, in fact, called Lucky Number 11, and it's all about a serial killer. So jump onto Jess's website, jesskitchingwrites.com, and have a little read.
That's interesting.
And that's going to be published in August.
Interesting you bring that, that it's about a serial killer, and obviously that's going to be interesting because, that's an interesting subject. But as we were talking, the concept of revenge or vengeance, how much of our ability to, consider revenge in our real life has been influenced by literature or entertainment. Because, for example, if you were to write, Veronica, a story about a character who something is wronged in some, profound and horrible way, and they have a moment to act revenge or not, and they chose to just ignore that and move on and be happy, would that be a good book?
No,
Isn't
it
that
makes
funny?
it really boring.
Yeah, exactly. So when we get excited by the books where they're like, yeah, go get them, doing an 80s montage and, I wonder how much we're influenced by that fact. Or maybe it's just a good thing that we create those scenarios in our characters, in our plots, in our stories and adventures so that we can have that catharsis, we can get that feeling out of having acted revenge. Because, for the majority of us, we're not going to really have those opportunities to act revenge. So, yeah,
Indeed, we're not.
It's a diamond with many facets, isn't it, the old revenge?
It is. But switching tracks, we've got another fabulous guest.
We do, yes, absolutely, in the old Writers' Lounge. And
Indeed, and very happy to chat with, of course, the fabulous Laurie Bell about her latest book, Blood Fever.
Well, I think after pondering revenge, I might need a stiff drink and I'll sit back and let someone talk about blood fever, which I suspect, well, I don't know, but I definitely, your blood temperature must rise a little when you're on the precipice of about to act revenge. But on that note, let's jump into the Writers' Lounge.
Beautiful.
Excellent.
Let's go.
I'll meet you in there. And here we are once again in the Writers' Lounge. And, I'll be curious as to the type of lounge that our very special guest is joining us in. So without further ado, while I quickly get the waiter or waitress or wait person over very quickly, snap, thank you very much. We're on a hurry here on a long weekend. Laurie Bell, thank you so much once again for joining us on the Australian Book Lovers podcast. Always an absolute pleasure to have you, whether it is in an interview or in the lounge room or in a cafe, which you haven't been yet, but you will be. But what Writers' Lounge are you in today?
Oh, so wonderful to be here, Darren and Veronica. I love joining you guys to talk about all things books, which is always fun. Definitely a very sci-fi bar kind of lounge that I'm in today, I think, with lots of weird and strange music going on in the background, lots of beeps and boops probably happening as well in the background. And I think I'll be having a cup of caf, some sort of science fiction-y coffee version that'll keep me buzzing for hours.
That sounds fantastic. Probably needs to come in a bulb. Are you in sort of zero G or something?
No. It is on a planet somewhere. Okay, good. Yep.
Well, I'm going to go along with that and think that, look, all of those beautiful bars that they had in the Expanse, which is, S.A. Corey's things, and, 6 seasons, just fantastic. I would like them to have done a lot more, but I'm happy with what we've got. So, I reckon one of those drinks that are a little bit fiery and a little bit of a heart starter would do me well. Yeah. What about you, Darren? Where are you tonight?
Well,
Has the right person come over?
Yeah, I'm thinking with similar to Laurie. So I was actually just out of my little cinema room for about 20 minutes. I've got some new speakers, so I was just playing with them. So, of course, what do I put on the big screen? Aliens, and because that's got such a good sound effects.
Was either that or Stephen King?
Yeah, so I thought, maybe I'm... Well, it was funny you say that, because I was just, as you were chatting there, I'm thinking maybe I'm on like an abandoned mining station on a planet that where everyone's disappeared, and I found a bottle of 200-year-old scotch in a filing cabinet while I'm sitting at an empty bar, just like the main character in The Shining when he's sitting in that empty bar. Only this is in sci-fi. So, but I'm not really alone because I've got two wonderful people joining me in the Writers' Lounge, and I'm looking forward to hearing everything that's happening in the Laurie Bell writing world. So,
listeners, let's give you a really quick rundown of anybody who doesn't know Laurie. You need to jump onto her website, solothefirst.wordpress.com, and have a little read. But Laurie has been writing on and off about all sorts of things for a long time. She says musings, rants, rambles, and actual works of fiction are a staple of her blogging life. She envies those amazingly talented folk who could write poetry or music, because she certainly can't. I wouldn't say yet. I would just add yet. So her blog is just that. It's not just that. She just rambles, and she hopes we enjoy. Now, many pieces of work she's got in her library now. We're up to 7 works.
I think this is, 7
this is
published.
Number 7. This is pretty amazing. So you've got the Butterfly Stone, Tiger's Eye, and the Crow's Heart, which are the stones of
Power series.
A Power series, out with Wyvern Peak Publishing.
Yep.
Then you've got a series, Whitefire, which is a Tony Bell adventure, and a little anthology of the good, the bad, and the undecided, which is all the characters from Whitefire.
Yes.
And a little bird on Twitter says that you may have finished book 2 of Whitefire.
Yes, I actually, it's been a long weekend here in Melbourne, so I've had the head down. Finger stopped scrolling, let me put it that way. And finally managed to get, the end written on Whitefire 2, which is very exciting.
That is very exciting, because I am really looking forward to seeing what Tony and her animatronic dog and cranky AI spaceship. Anyway, we'll leave that for another day, because you also have recently released Boss from Hell, which I just absolutely love. Those grandmothers were hilarious, and we reviewed that in the last episode.
Yes, I was listening to that. Thank you so much for that. That was wonderful.
You are most welcome. You really did make me just about snort my coffee, tea rather, so that was good. But we're here today to briefly chat about Blood Fever.
Yes, my new one. So
tell us all about it.
Blood Fever will be out July 20, and it is another sci-fi, but this one is almost the complete opposite from Whitefire. It's a darker, more of you could almost say a science fiction noir kind of murder mystery with private investigators. So I'm just going to read the blurb, if you don't mind.
Excellent.
Mish Janelle is a disgraced hunter who wants to find out who set her up for murder. Zeth Wen made the worst mistake of his life, and now a space cruiser full of children are dead. Rel Charlie was a child of the alien occupation and is now a man facing prejudice at every turn. When the PIs are forced to team up to solve the gruesome murder of a mid-level tech smuggler, no one is happy. But as the clues piece together and the bodies pile up, the three must work together if they are to prevent a shocking conspiracy to kill millions. As Zeth and Rel face their demons to prevent a bloodbath, Mish must wrestle with a voice that has lived inside her mind since she was locked away, one that whispers, "Kill them all."
There's a lot of layers there. Definitely a bit of a serious turn.
Yes.
Talking about the sort of the comedy of Boss from Hell and the lightheartedness of the Whitefire. Yeah.
Yep. So this is my delve into the darkness, so to speak.
And, welcome.
And I guess the summary I like to go with is that 3 people are basically having a really shit time of it, and they have to work together to solve a murder.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, Laurie, tell me, how different was it to write in a darker vein? How was there kind of a mental switching that you had to do?
Yeah.
Did the characters kind of just tell you that's the way they wanted it? Tell us about that.
Well, it's funny because Whitefire was my first. That was written way, way, way back in time. Blood Fever was actually the second book that I wrote. And that was started about 15 years ago, possibly longer. So I have been working on this one on and off through most of my focused on writing career once I really kicked into it. And yeah, it has always been my this is what else I can do kind of idea.
Okay, so when you are writing, were writing or editing Blood Fever versus, say the Boss from Hell, did you find you had to be in a particular mood to write or edit either one, or basically you were so organised you set yourself a task and that was it?
Definitely not. No, you do have to be in a particular frame of mind and mood for something like Boss from Hell. I think it sort of gets into the back of your head, and you do work through all sorts of, it's almost like having your own little psychologist on your shoulder. You work through a lot of interesting viewpoints and attitudes and reactions and actions to things. So yeah, I certainly had a specific sort of soundtrack playing when I would do all my edits. Because I've only really gotten into this particular band in the last couple of years, but there's something about music that helps you get into that frame of mind and really delve into the attitudes and reactions and the unconscious reactions that the characters have to things, and that's been really interesting to play with.
I must admit I do struggle with music. I have a soundtrack, but it's kind of got some subliminal stuff on it, but it's a really very faintly instrumental. I was listening to Paul Kelly's Songs of the South, the double album. I just couldn't do any writing because I was too busy singing.
I do have that problem.
I couldn't do it. It's like, no, that's not going to work at all. I have to do something else. Wait till the album finishes, because of course you can't stop it halfway through. And then went on and said, right, okay.
Well, I do a lot of my editing on the train, so I tend to have the earbuds in with music playing that I can't loudly sing along to on the train. On the train. Otherwise I'd be getting some very strange looks.
Melbourne trains are interesting enough. Yeah,
that lets me get into my own head enough that I can then edit and
do you find, are you a little bit similar to myself in the sense that I can't write with music? I can definitely have stuff on the background of movies or whatever. But when it comes to editing, I love the music. Because
agreed.
I don't know why that works that way, but I think writing, while we're putting words on page, I think the writing can maybe infiltrate a little bit, or maybe direct things where, which means there's another hand sort of guiding. Whereas once the words are down, I'm at the editing part, I can just get in that, like you said, that mood, that whatever the captured mood you're sort of trying to explore, and then just get down to business. So it's funny how that it works on one phase but not another. For me, and you, by the sounds of it.
Very similar.
So what was the contrasting music for then? What sort of music were you listening to for editing Boss from Hell as opposed to Blood Fever?
Well, it's fascinating. I think with Boss from Hell, it was a lot of musical theatre. So a lot of exaggerated, over-the-top emotions and carry-on and shenanigans and having all sorts of crazy times as you do with that kind of glorious, booming music that you can have.
A few kicks and swells and
exactly. So it is funny. It does definitely affect mood, which I think helps with the writing.
100%. Well, you got me thinking about Boss from Hell. I'm thinking Rocky Horror Picture Show soundtrack might have been a great one.
Yes, kind of perfect. Yeah,
absolutely. Or I think I had a bit of Wicked going on at the time, and a little bit of it'll come to me as we're chatting.
That's all right. So Laurie, you said it was out in July. When will Blood Fever? Yes. What's the actual day? The real day?
The 20th.
20th of July.
20th of July, absolutely. And I'm sending along a copy of Blood Fever to you guys that I'm hoping can be used in a giveaway.
Oh, we are very happy to give away. So if you want a free copy of Blood Fever, jump onto the website, join up the Book Lovers subscription and our very infrequent newsletter, because I'm a little bit busy doing other things. But yes, I have, as soon as Laurie's book arrives, and I have got another one, but I'm not going to mention that because we are talking all about Laurie. If you want one of those, jump on the website, get in, and you are in with a chance. Thanks, Laurie, for sharing that with us. Now, is this also through Wyvern's Peak Publishing, or...?
No, it's funny. Poor little Blood Fever is sort of my little book that could, my little choo-choo train. It's actually had a few offers, and they've fallen through, which has been kind of devastating each time that's happened.
Yeah.
But... yeah, it's the little book that never wants to be finalised. that I've put my foot down and said you're happening, and you're happening now. So it's been a lot of work putting it together. But yes, it is going to be out soon, which I'm really, really looking forward to seeing it out and about.
Great cover. I love the artwork.
Oh, my fabulous artist, Pat Naum, who is just absolutely brilliant through Red Tally Studios. Absolutely adore his work. He is just fantastic. So I've been so impressed. He also did Boss from Hell as well as White Fire. So yeah, loving the work.
Yeah, all very different, but all, equally engaging, which is fantastic. Yep. Well, Laurie, thank you for that. And is this a standalone, or dare I say it's the start of a series?
It could have a second on the horizon. It actually, a book 2 is finished, but because of all the reworks that I've done with Blood Fever, I will have to go back to that original second manuscript and rip it apart, I think. So that could
Don't you hate that? You think,
why did
I decide that in the first book, and now look what I have to do?
Exactly. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So
Darren and I are both in the middle of doing that for our series. So yeah, we are with you.
It's tough work, isn't it? When you really have to pare it back and think about what you've done and where things are going, and
so many threads. I'm thinking, hang on, I don't remember this colour being in the spool of threads.
Right, and when it's 15 years worth of edits.
Yeah, wow.
It takes a bit of work.
Now, we talked a little bit briefly before we hit the old record button, but you mentioned how you were lucky enough to finish a project today, and obviously with Blood Fever coming out very shortly. But I was kind of curious, that being that I just finished something today as well, but I realised that I don't have any sort of ritual when I finish something. It's usually, now I can do the dishes, or something really weird. But I'm curious, Laurie, do you have any sort of ritual or special celebration?
I do keep a bottle of bubbly in the fridge.
Excellent.
For any time I hit the end. It has kind of branched out into the end, and then each time a draft is finished, and then when it's published. so it's possibly not got quite the ritual it used to have. But yes, I will be cracking that open tonight.
Oh, very good.
I think that's a good ritual to have.
Yeah.
I think you need to celebrate it is a milestone, and you do need to celebrate that and recognise just how much work goes into putting together a book, whether it's a first draft or whether it's a final draft. There's just so much effort, and it's good to remember that and to celebrate each time you hit that milestone.
Yeah,
and it is lovely to hear. Sorry, Dan, I was just going to say, it's lovely to hear that after 15 years, this little book that could has finally done. Could, can, whatever verb we're up to. Well done.
And it could be that blockbuster that diverts your literary pathway, and you become an extraordinaire of the dark, sombre, darker side of writing.
Well, it certainly is. It's certainly the darkest out of all of my books, and given that Boss from Hell does delve into a bit of creepy darkness towards the end of it, I don't know whether that's a new direction that I'm heading in, or something I like to break out of with my fun stuff.
We shall see. Watch
I was
this
going to say the future, the near future is going to tell. But I do have to ask, because we're in the Writers' Lounge kicking back, and I'm thinking it's a bit chilly here in SA, and I'm sure it's a bit chilly over there in Victoria. So, of course, we go for comfort food in winter.
Yes.
What would be the ingredients of a comfort food if the dish was called blood fever?
Well, I have to say there's actually a dish in Blood Fever that is a sort of a stew, a soupy stew that's put together by one of the characters. So I'll have to go with that. It doesn't have a name and doesn't look appealing on the surface, but apparently tastes pretty good. But apparently does taste pretty good when you get into it.
Okay.
Cooked by a character chef or whipped up by a detective?
No, whipped up by one of the private investigators, indeed, in the tiny little kitchen on their spaceship. And, goes pretty well, actually.
Oh, excellent. Oh, well, there we go. Now, eventually you can slowly leak out the ingredients, maybe sprinkle them out there.
Bad idea. There is a lime kick towards the end of it, from what I remember.
Wow. A stew with lime.
Yep.
Okay. That is a small apartment with many very little ingredients.
Lot of whatever you've got goes into it, I believe.
Have you got any special plans? Any special release plans? Any special events? Anything cool?
Still working on that. Still working on that. I really like to get another book signing under me, but I'm struggling to find some time at the moment. Work's been quite intense, so working on it, I guess, is where I'm at the moment. Hopefully, I'll be able to let people know soon.
Excellent.
Very good. So watch this space, watch you on social media, and have a look at Laurie's website, which is, as I mentioned, and I almost remembered it today, but it's solothefirst.wordpress.com.
That's right.
And on Twitter, Laurie is, in fact, Laurie, not Laurie.
Yes. you might wonder whether I've had to say that a few times or not in my existence.
It's like people calling me Strawn. Yeah, no, it's not it. All right. Thank you so much for joining us for a chat in the lounge about blood fever, and congratulations on book number 7, almost out in the world. Drink up your drink. Darren, how's your drink going there?
Oh, it's a lonely drink over in this weird abandoned space station mining fort thing. There is some rattling coming from the overhead shafts, but
I'd keep an eye
I'll
on
put that down to the thermal winds. But
Nothing dripping from the grates, are there?
There's always a space right up there somewhere.
It's one way to make a hole in the floor, that old blood for acid for blood, isn't it? But no, like, huge congratulations, that goes without saying. But man, you're always on fire, you're always getting that pen to paper, and you're always full of energy and bringing new magnificent things to the world. So just, huge congratulations. And thanks so much for bringing the laughter and the energy to our show once again.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Veronica and Darren. I love coming into the lounge, and hopefully I will be able to pop in again soon.
We hope so as well. All right. Take care and bye for now.
Bye. So
thanks, Laurie. That is fantastic. Really looking forward to the next book. And
yeah, that's amazing. Absolutely.
She's very generously given us a copy of that and Boss from Hell as a giveaway. So people, if you want to get onto that list, you go to australianbooklovers.com/booklovers and subscribe. Believe me, I don't set out newsletters all the time. I am very slow, but we had 3 books to give away this time. Jump on there. And of course, if you have a book and you want to be featured on the Australian Book Lovers podcast, you go to australianbooklovers.com/for authors and get your book listed up there, and we'll spotlight it and have a chat about it, and you may even get onto the list to chat with us in the podcast. There's just not enough hours in the day, Darren, are there?
No, not at the moment, although for reasons unknown by the scene, I've suddenly gained a few more hours, which is good.
Gained a few more hours.
I might even be able to read some books again.
Oh,
well, more books than I wanted. Yeah, absolutely.
More books than you want to. All right.
Keep that. That's for another episode. But
another episode.
What about quote? What quote have you got for us this time?
I have got a really good quote from Yes, Sir Francis Bacon, who was in fact the first Viscount St Alban, also known as Lord Verulam. He was an English philosopher and statesman who served as the Attorney General and Lord Chancellor of England under King James I. He was born in 1561, so a little while ago. But yes, he died in 1626. Actually, he's pretty good for around that time. He lived for quite a while. Okay, his quote is, "A man that studieth revenge keeps his own wounds green, which otherwise would heal."
Yes, it has truth, and yet it doesn't. I don't know. That's such a difficult one. That one. Maybe I just don't let go of things so easy.
I think the whole healing thing, I'm with it. But yes, I suspected that. A little trouble. There you go. All right, what have you got for us?
Yes, I suppose. Very quickly before my quote, some of the best friends I made came from fights and then in the schoolyard, and then you think about how you're going to get revenge, but you end up becoming best buds. So anyway,
there you go.
My quote is from author Laura Hillenbrand, and this is from her book Unbroken: A World War II Story of Survival, Resilience and Redemption. I really like this quote, and the quote is, "The paradox of vengefulness is that it makes men dependent upon those who have harmed them, believing that their release from pain will come only when their tormentors suffer." And that was from Laura Hillenbrand. Yeah, that's something similar to your quote, actually. It's
looking from the other side.
Keep it alive and it keeps festering, I guess.
But the other person may have just kind of brushed it off. It doesn't mean as much to them. So that's
What's that?
You go.
Isn't there an old Chinese saying something? Wasn't it? Having hate or revenge or wishing revenge is like drinking poison to get back at somebody. I can't remember the quote. Drinking poison to hurt somebody else. But nonetheless, there you go. That's how bad I can screw up some famous quotes that probably everybody knows from the back of their hand. Anyway, tagline for episode 84.
Tagline, in fact, episode 84, because episode 85 is the fabulous Pauline Yates. And we chat to her about her book, Memories Don't Lie. If you want to find out what we're up to, jump onto social media, listen to the podcast, check out the website, and stay in touch. Drop us a line if there's anything that you'd like us to chat about.
Absolutely.
But in the meantime, tagline.
Yeah, so obviously we're doing a bit of a theme, thanks, Jess, regarding revenge. So I'm thinking we are, look, we're not definitely going to do revenge, but we're going to let this person know that we're thinking about it. We're going to do the old telephone call, like, Liam Neeson Taken. And we're going to be very calm,
right.
very, shall we say, intent in what we're willing to deliver should the world and universe not make things just. So I'm thinking, so we'll cue some dramatic music and we'll let the listeners know, what's going to happen, which is...
Remember.
That's right, you need to know. You must read more Aussie books. And if you don't, I will continue to try doing ridiculous acting voicing on this podcast.
Well, it just made me think of Auntie Jack. I'll come around your house and I'll rip your bloody arms off. I won't do that.
I'll find you and I'll embarrass myself in front of you.
No, I'll find you and I'll bring you a book and I'll make you read it.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for episode 84, and can't wait to join you for episode 85. Hope you enjoyed the wonderful interview, and take care out there, and see you real soon.
Bye for now.
Let's meet again, where magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.